Hello and welcome to our second episode of Beyond the Flight Deck. If you have any questions that pop in your mind during this interview, you can always type your questions in the comments and we will respond. When you look at the flight line, you typically see parked airplanes that are ready to live in the sky. However, airplanes are like machines, like cars and ships. They also need maintenance. Most of the time you spend at the airport is during a flight, and the efforts of mechanics to prevent and resolve issues with aircraft are often noticed. We are happy to have recorded our podcast in person while complying to the local health restrictions. And we are happy to have Morgan from JW Aviation, Bolingbrook-Cloud International Airport, who is a graduate of Lewis in 2019.
Happy to be here.
So Morgan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's a pretty normal day for me except for the interview setup.
For sure. Based on your work experience in aircraft maintenance, you aren't exactly new to the field. What made you interested into doing maintenance career?
You're right, I'm not new. I've been at this job since I got my license 2 years ago, and I kind of originally thought I'd go into like teaching or maybe engineering like my dad, but then I learned that you could go to college for planes, and I was just kind of like, I'll try that. And then as I was doing it, I kind of fell more and more in love with the aviation industry. So, kind of happy accident, sort of.
Yeah. What is a sudden moment, like when you knew that this was like what you wanted to do, like that exact moment?
I think I was still in class getting my license for this when I just kind of like was, it must have been in lab. And I just kind of looked around and realized I was having a lot of fun and I could do this happily for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. So you've worked in aircraft maintenance for 2 years. Since you began maintenance aircraft, would you say that the introduction of glass cockpits and increasing digital systems in aircraft simplifies your job, or does it make it more difficult?
I can't claim that my experience is universal, especially since I'm in general aviation, which is like flight school planes, small privately owned aircraft. So we don't see a lot of glass cockpit, but I have to say, honestly, it makes my job a little more complicated because I'm used to all the the old steam dials and the things where if there's something wrong, you can see something mechanical with it, or you can just yank out the instrument itself and send that off to the experts. With glass cockpit, then you're introducing a lot of electrical, which not my personal area of expertise. And at that point, it could be, if there's something wrong with it, it could be an electrical problem, or it could be something in software, which is, again, beyond me. So they're really cool, and I've heard that students like them, but I've got to say that they're a mixed bag. And honestly, I'm not a pilot myself, but I've heard from the flight instructors and from my friends who are pilots that sometimes people who only learn on the glass cockpit actually have trouble with the older planes that are just like the steam dials with the traditional instruments. And examiners who test in the older planes don't tend to like it when the student they're testing doesn't quite know what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Could you walk us through like your typical day at work?
It's hard to say what a typical day is because it really depends on what I've got in the hangar. I usually start off my day by coming in and checking the software we use to keep track of the flight school planes. It's a handy program that the flight school uses to schedule the students, but also to keep track of the hours that are put on the aircraft. Not like 24 hours in a day type of hours, but like miles on your car type thing.
Yeah.
Where if they're flying a 2-hour block for a lesson, you maybe get 1.1 TAC flight hours, like hours on the tachometer. And a lot of maintenance is scheduled by however many hours have been put on the engine. So every 100 hours, you're doing a 100-hour inspection. And generally, oil changes happen every 50 hours. So by keeping track of those things, I can try and estimate using the schedule, like what's upcoming, what I need to pull in today, when I need to tell my boss that the plane needs to be taken off the schedule for like just a couple hours, maybe. I've actually got a couple oil changes scheduled for Friday, you know. But that's, again, you gotta kind of redo the estimates every day because people, if somebody has a conflict, they might cancel their lesson, they might reschedule. If the weather goes bad, suddenly I don't have to do a couple of oil changes for a while.
So nobody takes their cars into dealerships just to be inspected, but airplanes are required to be occasionally inspected, like you were saying earlier. The purpose of the plane inspections, so even if there are no issues, do you still have to do those inspections?
Oh, definitely. It's like, most of my job is making sure the planes are legally compliant. It's especially important for privately owned planes because legally those only have to comply with annual inspections. And sometimes the only time this plane is getting looked at is once a year, or every 12 calendar months, according to the federal regulations. But that means that you have to check everything because it's not like you can pull over if you have troubles.
It'd be a little complicated.
Yeah, and that's also the time most private owners for their planes get things like oil changes done. So, and it's a good time to do it. So we always do an oil change when we're doing a annual inspection. It's just part of the criteria. And then you check things like if the tires are good, if all the flight controls are operating within the listed limits, is the engine running fine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You go down the whole list. The manufacturer of the plane has a list. The federal regulations have like a general overview, but you go by the manufacturer's manuals.
So has there ever been an airplane that entered your shop that presented a unique challenge, like a rare airplane or an unusual repair that?
Yeah, there are some fun ones and there's some unusual repairs. I'm lucky to say that our shop has a guy who's got a lot of electrical experience. My coworker Spencer spent 7 years in the Air Force just doing electrical stuff on the big jets. So if we've got electrical problems, he's pretty prepared for that.
He's the guy to go to.
Oh yeah, definitely. But unusual planes. There's an EAA chapter at this airport. For the audience who might not know, that's the Experimental Aircraft Association. So experimental aircrafts are a little different from ones manufactured for someone just to straight off buy, because experimentals can be built by the owner, often with a kit supplied from a manufacturer. And as long as they pass what's called a conditional inspection every year, and once they're built, once somebody with an inspection authorization, which is the next step up from the mechanics licenses that I have. Once that person has looked it over and signed it off and said, this will fly and this will not, once they've looked it over and signed it off, then that person can fly it. But with experimental aircraft, you're not required to have a lot of the regulated and aircraft-specific parts, and you're not also required to stick to manufacturer specs. So people can try out all the fun, really cool, like glass cockpit stuff. There's a guy on this airport who's been building a plane for like 5 years, and he's got like the fanciest, newest electronics in there. Like, I'm not sure how he's gonna have room for passengers at this point.
So how could one become a mechanic, and what education path should the podcasters that are listening and they want to do this career, what steps should they take to get to where you're at?
So what I do, and what any sort of first step into aviation maintenance requires, it requires 2 licenses, the airframe and power plant licenses. Power plant being the engine, airframe being everything else. Technically you could only have 1, but you'd be limited to just that aspect of the plane.
Yeah.
Those licenses, both of them total, generally take 2 years of about full-time schooling. Not because of really the classes, but because federal regulations require that for those licenses you have to have a certain number of hours just like sitting in a chair and listening to a lecture. And you're also required a certain number of lab hours. There's a lot of universities with programs like that. I went to Lewis University. There's like Purdue, I think there's one in North Dakota, there's one in Alaska, but that's a bit of a ways for most people. So if you're interested in aviation maintenance, it kind of makes it easier to determine your college choices.
Yeah.
Gotta say that simplified things. But so you're just 2 years just for the license, and it's it's a good mix of sitting in lecture and going in the lab and actually doing hands-on work. First semester is kind of like where you figure out if you're going to be actually able to do it, because they kind of front load, or at least they did for our program, they front load like the most tedious and annoying book work and the kind of trickiest hands-on lab work.
Yeah. Do you need a bachelor's degree? Because some programs you need it.
You don't, not to get into aviation maintenance. Like a lot of careers, if you ever want to go higher up and get into like management of the airlines, a bachelor's degree is good to have. But you just need the licenses to legally work on the planes. Yeah. There are definitely technical schools. I can't name any off the top of my head, but I've heard people talk about them. I've heard about people who've gone to them. And I think there's this, I've actually heard one of the older guys on the airport talk about how it's much less popular now, but there's also the possibility of apprenticing with a mechanic, but you have to have a certain number of like hours you have apprenticed that you can log and such. And I think they make it a little bit harder to get your license that way and test for it. I really love what I do. I especially love being in general aviation. There's a whole lot of different types of aviation to get into. Most people think of the airlines, but there's also corporate, there's cargo, there's general aviation like this. I know people who like corporate because it's very like, you're kind of assigned to one plane to keep it running for whatever business owns and operates it. And some people like it, some people don't. A lot of people apparently do.
That's what I want to do.
In fact, airlines, well, before the whole crisis that's going on right now, airlines were most popular because unions and such mean you get better pay and hours and benefits all worked out for you. Corporate also has good benefits like that. Cargo, I've also heard has good benefits, but it's slightly less popular for some reason. But general aviation is, personally I find the unofficial perks more fun. I don't have to worry about commuting to one of the major airports. I don't have to worry about coming in like at 2 a.m. for a night shift. I get weekends off. And I think the planes are just a bit more fun. Like a lot of airlines, people wind up specializing with like a certain aircraft or certain components of an aircraft, and here I can basically work on any variety of things that come in.
Have you ever had like an emergency call-in, like where you had to come in to help something or fix something?
You know, sometimes if one of the planes has popped a tire, if something's happened, my boss will text me, but you know, unless it's something that they urgently need that plane for soon, Generally, we're not too sort of rush to get things done because the flight school has multiple planes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if a customer pops a tire, well, you know, we don't want somebody stuck here overnight. So.
Well, awesome. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I think we're going to finish up this episode at this point. If you enjoyed our episode, it'll help our team if you hit the subscribe button and leave a like. Also, a special thanks to our guest at JW Aviation, Morgan, joining us today and providing us with a helpful insight into behind-the-scenes safety importance surrounding aircraft maintenance.
It was really fun. Happy to help out.
Yeah.
Something you'll notice about people in aviation is we're always happy to talk and keep talking about aviation, so.
For sure. So we will continue to upload a new podcast every other week. We are going to chat with some amazing aviation professionals throughout this time, and a special shout out to the members of EAA Chapter 461 for their continued support. And we're looking forward to Audrey Cal, Aviation Club support, and contributes to our podcast beginning this fall. Until next time, thanks for listening to Be on the Flight Deck, and stay safe during this time.